So today's session, we'll be going over Midnight's pricing modules. In today's session, we'll be focusing on the several different key areas of handling different pricing structure setups. For the base modules, we won't be touching the print estimation module today. We will be looking at the customer level, the contract level, and the standard level pricing methods primarily. Within standard pricing, we'll be also taking a look at pricing wizards and how to utilize our volume discounts built into each service. So to start today's administration menu list, we'll take a look at some of the core drop-down controllers. In here, we'll start with the service types list. In here, we've talked about setting up our service types in other sessions. The service types list is the most essential building block of the Midnight system. Each active service type represents a different department or profit center or costing center on the estimate and the order screens. It also handles as a grouping level for different services and tasks shown on estimates, work orders, and invoice reports, as well as several of our sales reports. You can sort these by adjusting the sort number, either clicking edit to modify it from a different sort number, or by adding a new one in the bottom row, and then giving it a different sort from there. The name is what you see on any of your documentation and on your primary screens as you navigate around the various modules of Midnight. And the code is simply that, a code meant to break or make something more unique compared to other instances of similarly named service types. You'll see the icon column and the color column, as well as the kiosk hide column. These three have nothing to do with our pricing structure. They are specifically designated as tools to assist with our shop floor data collection system. If you were to jump into one of our shop floor views, you would be able to see color-coded service types to organize your services on a departmental production level. The kiosk hide here allows you to hide services that are being jobbed into. We'll be covering all of that in a future session. Additionally, we have our accounting GL IDs. If you plan on importing your Midnight invoices into an accounting program such as QuickBooks or Peachtree, you will want to map your services so that way they hit the correct accounts when they're imported. All these should be set up before adding in your services, as you generally have fewer GL IDs versus a large or potentially very large amount of services. The GL IDs in the standard service screen all map to your core sales or income accounts within your accounting system. Depending on your accounting system, it might be a name or it might be a number. The key to enter data correctly, so that way it syncs up properly with, say, your QuickBooks or Peachtree program, is to generally open up your chart of accounts within your alternative accounting program and make sure that you copy and paste or retype in everything from the text to even character and capitalization as you see it within your accounting program. The GL ID on this screen is what gets referenced on your different services and exported out. The description is simply a tool to assist you in being able to select these properly when going down the line. Because you may have number-based GL IDs, a description would be the way to go, so that way you can tell what GL ID is associated with which account. To add a new instance here and across pretty much any other area of the administration menu, you can simply type in information on the gray bar on the bottom. And by clicking the Save Disk button, you commit that record to the table, and you can see it and select it in drop-down menus so that you can find it accessible in. To modify it, you can click the Edit button. In most of our screens, you'll be able to enter, adjust, or modify instances of data that you would see in any column. In several of them, the leftmost column cannot be adjusted, such as service types or GL IDs. In others, such as holidays, time zones, and postage menu options, you can adjust them freely. After making a change, you can click the Save Disk button to update that record. And you can also adjust it by unchecking the Active checkbox. What this does is it hides it from your core active view. You can always see if the record still exists by looking in your unchecked items. This way you can always turn it back on in the future if you need to, or rely on that record for historical accuracy later on. If you click the red X button on many of our admin menus, it will simply hide the item. So you can either click the red X or edit the record to deactivate it. Moving on, we have the account item code. Pretty similar to the GL ID structure in your accounting program, these will map to your items list. Most programs, such as QuickBooks, do utilize an item code as a secondary level of export and import accuracy. Just like in the GL ID screen, simply populate your item code and description, and then you can associate them with your services. You can also create machines and machine departments to associate to your services. These don't necessarily associate with our pricing structure, but they do supplement into the service screen for the purposes of being able to associate with service to machinery ties. That way you can schedule yourself in a more automated way. In here you can create a department, plug in a time in which that department can operate, and after committing it to a record, you can expand your list and click the Add Machines button to add several of your machines, such as presses, to one of your press or other service type machine lists. You control the actual machines in your Machines menu. In here, you have your machine code, name, and description. These can effectively be the same thing. The code, name, and description columns come from another version of our software, which doesn't necessarily have to be unique for each varied instance. Then you have our scheduling modules, job costing modules, and shop floor data collection modules utilize this information. Next, we have the service wizards. Under our wizards, you can define various if-then statements. In this case, you can make it so that way your services can present you with a list of options. So that way, after selecting your service, you can fill out or provide more detailed information, which updates both the price and or the production speed of that particular service. One simple example is this tabbing. If you were to define different prices for the types of tabs that you're using on your tabbing service, you can have it designated in such a way where you get a different price added in or multiplied for each one. You can also adjust the factor column to change the production speed of your service's defined run rate. You can also check the text input box to supplement yourself with a choice that effectively works as an other option, allowing the CSR or sales rep who's entering the item to fill in the details that they have to for the services data. Additionally, the variance input allows you to define a price or value for that instance, commonly used in scenarios like how much markup you would like to apply to a specific service. Back under our global settings, we have a few different methods of pricing that can be enabled and modified. To start, we have the ability to define whether or not the total services and tax or the CPM are available on the main estimate and order screens. By default, the total service and tax will be available on the primary screen. You can turn on the CPM if you wish, and it won't cause an issue to have both on simultaneously. Under the estimates/orders list, you have the ability to define some print estimating information such as your markup, globally applied to new jobs or new templates. You can also designate your service availability lists by checking either the only services associated with customer pricing or only services with contract pricing can be displayed on an estimate or order. You can enable or disable contract pricing entirely. And if you're taking advantage of our wide format calculator, you can set up price rounding to consolidate your pricing to the nearest 3 place and the digits value rather than the 8th place like it would normally calculate out to. Finally, you have the ability to lock orders after you've exported them out to your accounting system. By checking this box, only a user with the administrator role can modify an order that is currently existing and has been exported out from Midnight. It does not have to yet be imported into your accounting system to be locked. As long as it has been exported, it will be locked down in such a way that prices and quantities cannot be adjusted. One other similar and sort of related to pricing method handler is under the reports list. Under Midnight, you can email out quotes and invoices. By default, Midnight does not track outgoing emails and log them for future access. However, if you have a created instance of an Exchange server, which allows you to have an email, say, designated to outgoing messages from Midnight, you can set up a default BCC to receive all outgoing emails from Midnight. This allows you to confirm any of the emails that you would have anticipated being sent out, as well as including an attachment of anything that has been sent, so that way you can, again, confirm that what you're sending is actually going out to your client. If your client reports that they're not receiving an email, you can check this to make sure that your emails are going out, and if it's a problem with their spam filters or other security setup, you can at least use this to provide some backup information to your client and confirm that the emails are going out. Finally, we'll take a quick look at our services list. Under here, you'll see all of your active services by default. You have some filters to consolidate, sort, and search within your services screen to pull up the service that you do need. Under here, unlike most of the other screens, you cannot create a new service by scrolling to the bottom and adding one at the bottom of the list. You would need to go into the quick links list and hit the add standard service, or within one of your services, copy it to give it a new name, new pricing information, and other details. That way, when saving, you have a new instance of your service. I'll be taking a quick snapshot of our core services screen. We'll be returning in here in just a moment. So if we take a look at one of our estimates or one of our orders, we can get a very, very brief view of the core things that we've looked at so far. For instance, we'll see the various defined service types that we have listed within our admin service types menu. They're sorted in the operations level that we have set up within the sort choices in our admin service types menu. And if we open up any of our documentation, such as estimates, reports, we'll see them named as we would see them right here. When defining your services, you can only pick, once creating that service, in which service type it appears under. You'll see that here the service type is grayed out. That's because after selecting it, it is no longer available for choice. Pricing can be set up on service types and services as either being given a flat fee or a per piece or per thousand rate. By default, I would suggest setting up your piece pricing at a per piece level. Most of our reports do accommodate for that level of pricing. So if you select your service, you'll see that you can have your price designated here as your service's base price. We look under our data tab and select this address setup service, for instance. You'll see that we have our 0.6 cents per instance. If you were to work on something that is, say, operating within an hourly charge setup, for instance, graphic design work, you can also set your pricing on a per hour level. In this case, you do have the ability to enter your quantities with a decimal value. After selecting your service and adjusting the quantity, your extended price will calculate out to match whatever you have selected. Services that have the wizard attached to them allow you to pick and choose different operations based on what you select. If I open up this campaign setup service wizard, for instance, you'll see I have several options here. With my base price of $5 already established, I can select a different choice, and if there is a price change associated with it, then we'll see the price adjust right here to give us a new extended or per piece price. If we look in the details, we can see information populated in the item description selection. This is based on the wizard or series of wizard choices that we make. And this also appears on the documentation, such as work orders, so that way your production team can properly do what it is they need to do by having your CSRs click options that convey the right information to them. If you need to adjust the contents of your wizard choice, you can overwrite what's here. Or you can re-click the wizard button from within the details to rerun the wizard from its original setup, give you different information, and more properly updated pricing. If we take a brief look at one of our estimate reports, we'll see what we have listed for each instance. Our campaign setup now displays the correct info based on the wizard choices that we've made. If we select a service from within another one of our departments and identify as it having a discount or setup fee associated with it, then that setup fee will be applied or broken down within the per piece cost to give you its full pricing value. For instance, a service such here as shrink wrap is 2 cents per piece, but with a setup fee, it may come to a different value. We can see that our prices jumped up just a little bit. That would be because we can see our setup fee of $100 is reverse calculated into the base price to give us effectively a unit price for which to apply calculations to. If our service includes a minimum price, then the same sort of thing will happen. After selecting that service, if the minimum price is not met based on the quantity and the calculated unit price, the minimum price will override it. These values can be defined within your admin setup. And finally, the unit cost here is simply a sales tool to be able to track profitability and revenue when utilizing services that have an item generally associated with them. To bring up one more key point, you'll notice that you do have services with a code and a description. The code, description, and in our admin menu's case, service name, are all corresponding elements to what your documentation displays and also what you see on your production boards. You can adjust what you see in here by making sure that you're referencing the service column by code and the service description column actually by our service name. The description is specifically reserved for print estimation services and can be ignored entirely if your service doesn't launch the print calculator. Under the service action for this particular service, you'll see that we have several choices. For instance, no action, wizard. If I look under our print department, we'll see several that are designated to launch print calculator. These can be defined in our standard services menu. And if we are selecting a wizard to associate with our service, we can pick and choose the starting wizard from the drop-down. And finally, if our service has a production speed associated with it, after selecting it, we can see that the run rate, which is available within the details of the line item itself, will be ported in. So that way, when looking at the production board, we can reverse calculate out the time it'll cost to run the service by seeing the quantity divided by the run rate, so let us know how many hours it'll take to produce and complete that service. There are a few other tools in here that we can utilize to more effectively calculate pricing or to make sure that we're selling and building our invoices as effectively as possible. The outside service allows us to designate a service as being related to buyout. If this is something that you don't normally do, go ahead and check this service checkbox. Now any of your profitability, revenue, and expense tracking reports will recognize this service as being an outside service and can be tracked differently in our sales reports. The taxable status can be defined as the service's primary expectation for whether or not it should be taxed or not. By default, we notice most of our users tax the services and then pick and choose whether or not the customer is taxable, and then which tax jurisdiction to apply to that customer, so that way the correct taxes are being associated with each item. If you're unfamiliar with the complexity of having various tax jurisdictions, be aware that some states, such as Florida and California, have very, very detailed tax jurisdictions based on county level, city level, state level, and occasionally street level. Other locations, such as Texas, primarily handle their taxes on just a simple state level. So where you may have each customer with a defined tax jurisdiction based on their location, a customer that is considered taxable in a state such as Texas with a simple tax structure can simply just have state or core state plus county applied. Finally, if you do have a taxable customer or a non-taxable customer, defining the tax jurisdiction here designates what goes into your accounting software. Paying heed that an exempt customer will typically need to be marked as taxable under the exempt status to distinguishing your accounting program as them being exempt from tax versus simply non-taxable. Let's save out of this job and return to our admin service list for just a moment. Under our service list, you'll see that we can pick and choose and sort based on specific options, such as either predefined service types and taxable status, or by typing in something that fits the needs of what it is that we're looking for. Look at our folding service, for instance. You'll see I have a print additional service checkbox selected. In this case, we can utilize within the print calculator this service and any others like it with this box checked. The cost per unit replaces the base price for either flat service costs or for wizard-based service costs. So be aware that you can't have one service with multiple levels of pricing within the service record itself. Additionally, the volume pricing at the bottom allows you to define a discount for that service up to a certain quantity. For instance, if I were to say up to 5,000, I would have a 0% discount. I could exceed that and say up anywhere between the previous value, which is 5,000 in this case, and 10,000, we'll offer an 8% discount. This will show on the service level screen an adjustment to the calculated cost, even if a wizard is involved, to give us a more accurate level of pricing. The other options that we see in here, such as Show on DJB and Calendar, Show on Orders Shipping tab, Itemization Code, and Template Group, largely don't have to deal with anything specific in terms of pricing. Itemization Code allows you to utilize one of Midnight's other reports for revenue and sales tracking. The unit of measure simply works as an information piece to change how this displays on your estimates or orders, which display this piece of text as an info element. The Show on DJB Calendar, Shop Floor and Display View, and Schedule options here allow you to automatically schedule out or have a defined and displayable option of that service on our scheduled and production board. If you wish to auto-schedule your service, you will need to have a machine and the machine department selected. If it's not necessary, then you don't need to worry about having this built in at all. You'll see when I unchecked auto schedule, my days to schedule was removed. This is because you can't schedule something out by a certain amount of days if you're not setting it to automatically schedule itself. Returning to Service Wizards one last time allows us to see how we can set these up in a way that works most efficiently for what we're trying to do. By being aware of your service's original price or base price as being designated as the starting value, you can see that anytime you select an option, the base price, in the case of our, for instance, address setup service is 0.6 cents here, would be utilized to begin before the price variance is kicked in. To create a new instance of wizard level pricing, you can at the bottom create a new line by filling in a new number, the category, description, and general text or instruction type to inform the user as to what it is that they're selecting and why. After creating your new wizard choice, by expanding it, you can add within the gray option row for each instance a new choice. I were to look at, say, this grouping level option on our duplication elimination, you'll see I have a choice for other with a text input checked. As I mentioned earlier, by having this checked, now your user can type in specific text for this option. You'll also see that the factor here is different, indicating that the run rate will be modified from its base value, as defined in the service level, to a modified value multiplied out by whatever you have typed here in the factor. You'll also see that there is a successor. All services do have the option to continue forward and provide more options. In a common scenario, you'll see here, the successor for 42 means that when one of these options is selected, the wizard number 42 loads and gives the user the choice to select any option from this wizard, tracking the cost options that were included from the previous choice or choices to give you a fully calculated out unit price before minimum price checks. Any successor option with a 0 immediately brings you to an end upon selection and returns you back to the main screen, committing the calculated service cost and run rate out into the job for use on estimate reports, order reports, and production reports. You'll see that we also have the price expression. This works in tandem with the price variance to determine how your cost is being modified. If you were to have a service that, say, has a cost of $1, by having a choice with a price variance of plus and, say, 25 cents, by selecting this option, your service per piece cost will now become $1.25. If you proceed down the line to other service wizards that have other cost variances or price expression modifiers, the price will continue to be updated based on the options in which you select. You don't always have to have a price, for instance, if you simply want to use this to convey information. But if you do, then you allow your prices to be adjusted based on the complexity of your jobs. One common scenario is under our basic printing structure. Or if we look at our cutting service wizards, you'll see that we have our base cost modified in such a way that in here is multiplied by a specific variance. What happens here is that we'll have a 0%, 20%, or negative 55% option calculated into our price based on what we have selected for this cutting services per piece cut price. If you start off with a base price of 0, then any price expression of an asterisk indicating a multiplication, or a backslash returning a division value, will not actually generate any mathematical cost. As each price option continues, you'll see that we have a second option and a third option to let us know how our pricing and production speeds will be impacted. So using a combination of wizards to achieve the most specific pricing that you're looking for is the best way to go when working with a complex service, preventing you from having to include potentially dozens of services, all related to one specific option or task. Finally, the cost variance allows you to modify the included cost against that specific service for revenue tracking. And as in our other screens, you can either adjust the line item data choices themselves by clicking the Edit button, or remove them entirely by clicking the X. Going to one more area where things get a little bit more complicated is the customer level itself. In here, within each specific customer record, you can define whether or not that service has a built-in price associated with it based on the customer's pricing options. If you look in the pricing tab for that customer, you can pick and choose either select services or load all services that are active in your admin menu, and then apply different pricing methods to each one. You'll see we have the service base price and service minimum price column. These refer to the general or admin level pricing that's been established. You can give a different rate, which overwrites the base price with a new single unit piece value. You can give a discount, which modifies the calculated rate or current rate by whatever the discount is that you have provided. Or you can apply a minimum price to give a customer a different minimum price compared to whatever would be set in the global menu. You can select multiple services and make changes to them en masse. And in the level of, say, adding a % discount, maybe a loyalty discount, you can type in a % value, click Apply Discount to All Services, and update it so that way anytime you select one of these services on a job, their base price will be modified by the discount that we have here. Finally, we do have the ability to copy pricing out to children customers. In the details, you can associate a child account to a parent customer account by selecting the parent company here. If you were to enter the parent company, and then under the pricing tab, click Copy Pricing to Children, you'll have the rate, discount, and or minimum price distributed out to each customer's instance. You can also see if you have contracts defined for a customer, either by clicking into the project name here, or by entering the contract pricing search. You can modify or create new instances of contracts. Contracts can be set up in such a way where you give it a name, a customer to associate it with, a core type, which is simply an information piece, and unique pricing for quantity level information based on the service itself. For instance, by clicking a service, perhaps consulting, you can overwrite the rate, minimum price, or even apply a setup fee. You can also modify them in such a way that you update the quantity rates for that specific service. So that way, from a quantity of, say, 0 to 4,999, you'll charge a quarter per piece. And increase or decrease the price incrementally as you see fit. In order to apply a contract to a customer's job, you do need to be able to select that customer to have a validity check on the estimator order level recognize that there is a potential contract available. After selecting the customer, you'll see the attached contract pricing text has made itself available. By clicking it, you'll receive a pop-up that allows you to pick which contract you want to apply. And when you apply your pricing template or any other contract instance, make it so that way these services, prices, all revert to 0 with the exception of any of the specific services that you plugged in to the template or the contract instance as you go. Finally, under the orders You can define how your prices are consolidated onto your documentation. For instance, if you were to update or change any of your prices in such a way that you want them to appear differently on your reports, you can have them built as such and then displayed on our reports, such as our invoice price with a calculated per piece cost. You can consolidate prices across versions or run pricing for a single version that you're in on multi-version jobs. You can summarize pricing, which consolidates prices across multiple versions into single department instances, regardless of the version count. You can load some of our basic invoices to display pricing without worrying about the per piece cost, simply the calculated total at the bottom. Or if you open up your quick links and enter the group billing, you can pick and choose to define how your pricing structure is established. For instance, if we want to set up two different groups, printing and mailing, we can designate which quantity is available for these cases, how the pricing establishes itself, either say per 1,000, by container, each, etc. And we can pick and choose which options have each and every different element of pricing associated with them. So that way we have a mock invoice generated right over here that displays pricing as we decide. If we open up our invoice group billing or invoice price group billing, we'll see the instances of how we picked and chose each element of pricing. To give us a calculated price adjusted by the unit of measure we defined for a full extended price and a subtotal that matches. Copying forward jobs does not copy forward the specific pricing methods that you define. Everything here on screen will be available when you copy a job ahead, but the group billing instance data will not. That's pretty much everything there is to pricing. With the exception of a few elements, such as estimate level multi-quantity pricing, which I had gone over during our estimate level meeting, or more details on service level pricing within orders that I'll be going over with our orders session. That covers the core elements for all pieces of pricing set up within Midnight. Go ahead and wrap up today's session, and if you have any questions or comments, feel free to hit me with them.